After losing our mom and getting kicked out of our home, I had to raise my little brother on my own. I was just 17. We had no money, no support, and nowhere to go. I thought that was rock bottom until I discovered a hidden storage unit, an envelope full of secrets, and a truth about our mom that changed everything. This is the story of how we lost everything, built it back with the help of strangers, and uncovered a past my mom kept hidden for years. It's not just about poverty or struggle, it's about resilience, family, and the quiet kind of strength that saves lives. And in the end, a small act of hope lit the way for our future. You ever have one of those days where everything feels just a little too quiet? That was the kind of morning I woke up to. The air in our rundown apartment was still, the kind of still that makes your skin crawl. It was like the building was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. And little did I know, everything was about to fall apart. I was 17 when the worst year of my life began. My name's Jake. I grew up in a small town that folks either never leave or can't wait to escape. Our neighborhood sat between the train tracks and a factory that had been shut down for years. Dad used to work there before it closed. After that, it was odd jobs here and there, whatever he could get. Mom worked at the diner, pulling double shifts most days, trying to keep food on the table for me and my little brother, Danny. Danny was only 9 at the time. He was the kind of kid who smiled through just about anything. He loved drawing superheroes and would tape his sketches all over the apartment walls. They were the only color in our gray little world. Now, I knew we were poor. I wasn't clueless. I'd gotten used to skipping meals, wearing hand-me-downs, and pretending my shoes weren't falling apart. But I didn't realize just how bad things were getting until that day Dad didn't come home. At first, I figured he was out looking for work again. But when he still wasn't back by midnight, and Mom's hands were shaking as she pretended to fold laundry she'd already folded twice, I knew something was wrong. "Mom, where's Dad?" I asked her. She hesitated for a second too long. "He's figuring things out." I wanted to ask more, but something about her voice told me to drop it. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. Not the kind of polite knock you hear from a neighbor, but 3 loud bangs that made Danny flinch. I opened the door and came face to face with a man in a suit and 2 people from child services. They didn't waste any time. The man introduced himself as someone from a loan agency, said our father had defaulted on a loan he wasn't supposed to take out in the first place. Something about forged documents. I didn't understand half of it, but what I did understand was that they were there to take the apartment back. Turns out, Dad had borrowed money under a fake name and used our apartment as collateral. But he was gone now, vanished into thin air. No note. No goodbye. We had 2 weeks to leave. I thought that was rock bottom, but I had no idea how deep the hole would go. Mom tried everything, begging the landlord for more time, applying for emergency assistance, calling every church and shelter she could find. But nothing came through. 2 weeks later, we were out on the street with 3 garbage bags, a shoebox full of Danny's drawings, and no clue where to go. For the first week, we stayed in our old car. It didn't run anymore, but it was better than the sidewalk. I'd watch my mom try to sleep sitting up, using her purse as a pillow. Danny slept with his head on my lap most nights. I skipped school. Couldn't stand the idea of showing up in the same clothes every day and pretending everything was fine. My best friend, Tyler, tried calling, but I stopped answering. I couldn't let anyone know how far we'd fallen. One night, as we were parked behind a closed-down grocery store, some teenagers came by and started banging on the windows, laughing like it was a joke. Mom screamed, and I grabbed a tire iron, ready to defend what little we had left. But they ran off before I could even open the door. That night, Mom cried herself to sleep. I didn't. Instead, I sat there staring at the ceiling of that car, trying to think of a way out. The next morning, I left a note for Mom and Danny, told them I'd be back by lunch. Then I walked 5 miles to the nicer side of town and waited outside a pizza place until the manager showed up. "I'll do anything," I told him. "Wash dishes. Clean floors. I don't even care what you pay." He looked me up and down and said, "You in school?" "No," I lied. "You legal to work?" I hesitated. "I just really need the job." Maybe he saw something in my eyes, or maybe he just felt sorry for me, but he said I could start that afternoon. Cash only. Under the table. I worked like my life depended on it. Because it did. I scrubbed until my knuckles bled, burned my hands pulling trays out of the oven, and came home reeking of grease. But I brought food every night. Real food. Hot food. Danny looked at me like I was a superhero. But things weren't getting better. Mom was getting thinner, paler. She wasn't sleeping, and sometimes I'd catch her staring off into space like she was a million miles away. Then, one night, I came back from work and found her passed out in the front seat. I shook her, screamed her name, but she wouldn't wake up. Danny was crying, panicking, begging me to do something. I called 911. First time I'd ever dialed it in my life. They took her to the hospital, and that's when the truth finally came out. She hadn't just been tired. She'd been sick for a while, really sick. Something with her kidneys. She'd been hiding it from us, skipping doctor visits, avoiding medication because she couldn't afford it. She didn't want to burden us. She never told me, never said a word. The hospital let us stay for the night, tucked away in a waiting room with plastic chairs and buzzing lights that never turned off. Danny curled up next to me, using my hoodie as a blanket, but I couldn't sleep. I just sat there, staring at the vending machine across the room, wondering how everything had spiraled out so fast. The doctor came in around dawn. His face told me everything before he even opened his mouth. "She's stable," he said, "but she needs dialysis." Regular treatment. That's not optional anymore. I nodded like I understood, but I didn't have the slightest clue how we were going to pay for it. We didn't even have a home, let alone health insurance. When Mom woke up, I sat by her bed. She looked small, frail in a way I'd never seen before. "I'm sorry, Jake," she whispered. "For what?" "For not telling you. For making you carry all of this." I wanted to be angry. I really did. But I couldn't bring myself to yell at her. She looked like she was already carrying more pain than anyone should. "I'm not going anywhere," I told her. "We'll figure this out." She gave me the faintest smile. "You sound like your dad used to." Funny thing was, I hadn't thought about Dad in weeks. It was like he'd vanished from our world. Just a ghost in old photos and broken promises. I visited him once when I was 10, in a place Mom told me was just a special school for grown-ups. Back then, I didn't know what rehab was. I just remember he gave me a broken toy truck and said he'd be home soon. He never came home. Not really. 2 days after Mom was admitted, a social worker showed up again. This time, with papers and a tone that meant business. She said we couldn't stay in the hospital much longer, and that if Mom needed long-term care, we'd have to go into temporary housing. Maybe even be split up if they couldn't place us all together. That's when I made a decision I hadn't even realized I'd been building up to. "We don't need placement," I said. "I've got a job. I can take care of my brother." She blinked. "You're 17, 18 in 3 months. That's still a minor." "Then wait 3 months." She hesitated, then said she'd file an emergency guardianship review. Something about unique family hardship and me being the only available next of kin. I didn't care what it was called. I just didn't want Danny ending up in a stranger's house. The next few weeks were a blur. I picked up extra hours at the pizza place. I found a guy at the kitchen who let me rent a room over his garage for cheap. It was tiny, just big enough for a mattress and a wobbly table, but it had heat, and it locked. That was more than we'd had in a long time. Danny hated it at first, said it smelled like mold and old socks. But I hung up some of his superhero drawings, and eventually, he settled in. Every day, I'd drop him at school, go to work, then visit Mom at the hospital. I started recognizing the nurses, even the weird beeping sounds of all the machines. She was always tired, but she never stopped asking about us. One night, she pulled me close and whispered, "There's something in the storage unit. Back behind the old flea market. The one with the blue door." "What is it?" "Something you need to know." She didn't say more. She just closed her eyes and drifted off. The next day, during my lunch break, I took the key from her purse and went to the storage unit. I figured it would be old photos or maybe some stuff from our apartment we hadn't been able to grab. But when I opened the unit, my heart stopped. There were boxes, dozens of them, each labeled with a name I didn't recognize. And in the far corner was a safe. I didn't have the code. I stared at it for a long time before taking out my phone and calling someone I never thought I'd reach out to again. "Tyler." He picked up on the second ring. "Jake." "Yeah, I need a favor." We hadn't spoken in over a month, not since everything went downhill. But he didn't hesitate. Said he'd be there in 10 minutes. When he showed up, he looked me over and said, "Man, you look like you've aged 5 years." "Feels like it." He had a friend who was good with locks. 20 minutes later, the safe was open. Inside? Envelopes. Thick ones. Each stuffed with cash. And underneath those, documents. Legal papers. Court records. Letters. All pointing to one thing. My mom had been receiving money every month from someone. Quietly. Secretly. And it had started the same year Dad got clean and disappeared. Turns out, Dad hadn't vanished. He'd been working under a different name in another state, sending money home, trying to make up for everything he'd done. But Mom had kept it all hidden, never touched a cent. That didn't make any sense. Why would she do that when we were barely surviving? That night, I asked her. She looked away, then said, "Because it wasn't clean money. He took it from people who trusted him. I couldn't use it. I couldn't let you grow up on it." "But you saved it," I said. "For you. For Danny. In case I wasn't around." It hit me then she'd known. All along, she knew this illness might take her. And she'd planned for that. 2 weeks later, she was gone. Just like that. The morning Mom passed, I sat on the bench outside her room, holding her necklace in my hands. It was a simple gold chain with a tiny locket she always wore. Inside, there was a picture of me and Danny from years ago, back when life still had soft edges. Danny didn't say much at the funeral. He held my hand tighter than he ever had before. I kept a brave face the whole time, but later that night, when he finally fell asleep on the mattress we shared, I cried harder than I thought possible. I cried until it hurt. The next few days were a whirlwind. Paperwork, court appearances, and more conversations with social workers. I was surprised when they approved the emergency guardianship request. Maybe it was because we had no extended family, or maybe it was because I kept showing up, working, doing my best not to fall apart. I remember sitting across from the judge, sweaty palms and all, and hearing her say, "As of today, you are the legal guardian of Daniel Whitmore." I was 17 and officially a parent. For a while, I ran on adrenaline. I worked, cleaned, helped Danny with homework, and cooked meals that usually involved dollar store pasta or rice. The envelopes of money we found in the storage unit helped. Not just to get by, but to breathe, even if only a little. I didn't tell Danny about the money at first. I didn't know how. How do you explain that our dad, someone who'd walked away from us, had been trying to make amends from the shadows? That he'd been sending us money we never used? Instead, I told him we were going to be okay, that I had a plan. He believed me, because he wanted to. About a month after the funeral, I found an old voicemail on Mom's phone. It was dated a week before she passed. The message was from Dad. Lisa, I know you'll probably erase this, but I'm trying again. I found a way to make things right. I want to come home. I want to see the boys. I can explain everything if you just give me a chance. Then he hung up. That night, I stayed up thinking. I didn't want to forgive him. Part of me wanted to throw the phone across the room. But another part, the exhausted, hollow part, just wanted answers. So I tracked the number and found an address in Ohio. It was a trailer park on the edge of town, the kind of place where you didn't ask too many questions. A place where people went to disappear. I debated for days whether I should write him, or call, or just show up. Eventually, I did none of those things. Instead, I sent him a letter. I told him Mom was gone. I told him I knew about the money. And I told him that if he ever wanted to meet his sons again, he'd have to prove he'd changed for real this time. Weeks passed. No reply. Then, one Saturday morning, while Danny and I were having cereal on the floor of our little garage apartment, there was a knock at the door. Danny looked up at me, wide-eyed. I'll get it, I said. When I opened the door, my stomach twisted. There he was, standing in worn jeans and a flannel shirt, looking older than I remembered. His eyes were tired, but clear. No slurring, no stumbling. Just a man with years of regret written all over his face. Jake, he said. You wrote me. I didn't move. Just stared at him. I'm not here to make excuses, he said quickly. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For what I did to your mom. For what I didn't do for you and Danny. I've been clean 5 years. Got a job fixing HVAC systems. I don't expect forgiveness, but if there's anything I can do, anything at all, I'm here. I still didn't say anything. Danny peeked around the corner and froze. Jake, is that? I nodded slowly. Yeah, buddy. That's Dad. Dad dropped to one knee. Hey there, Danny. Danny didn't run to him. Didn't cry. He just stood there for a long moment, and then said, You missed a lot. I know, Dad said softly. But I want to be here now, if you'll let me. I told him he could come in for coffee, but he'd have to earn our trust back, slowly. He agreed without hesitation. That was the beginning of something new. Not a happy ending, but maybe a second chance. Dad didn't try to move in or force anything. He'd stop by once a week, help with homework, fix things around the apartment, take Danny to the park. He even came to my job one night and left a tip that was half my rent. Over time, I saw it. He really was trying. Not to rewrite the past, but to show up for the present. Then one day, Danny came home from school with a flyer. It was for a youth art contest. First prize, a $2,000 scholarship and a chance to display the piece in the town library. He begged me to let him enter. I looked at the flyer, then at the rent notice pinned to the fridge. 2 months behind. Still, I said yes. Danny worked on that drawing for days. It was a superhero, one he made up, called the Watcher. It looked a lot like our mom. The contest was a week away when disaster hit again. I came home from work to find the door kicked in. Our place had been ransacked. The money from the envelopes? Gone. Everything we'd saved, everything we'd clung to, wiped out in one night. I just stood there, frozen in the doorway, my feet crunching over broken glass and splintered wood. Danny came up behind me, clutching his sketchpad, eyes wide with fear. Jake, what happened? I didn't have an answer. Our little garage apartment had never been much, but it had been ours. And now drawers were ripped open, clothes scattered, picture frames smashed on the floor. The box with Mom's letters? Gone. The envelope of money from the storage unit? Gone too. I checked under the mattress where I'd hidden the emergency stash. Empty. They'd taken everything. I called the police, but I knew how it would go. This wasn't the part of town that got justice. The officer nodded, took notes, and promised to file a report. No real investigation. No fingerprints. No hope. Danny sat on the edge of the mattress, holding the drawing he'd worked so hard on. It had been crumpled in the chaos, a footprint across the corner. He didn't cry. He just said, Why do people keep taking stuff from us? And I didn't know what to tell him. Later that night, Dad came by after I called him. When he saw the mess, he clenched his jaw, hands shaking. Did they hurt you? He asked. No, just cleaned us out. He sat down, looked around the place like he was trying to memorize it, then said something strange. They didn't take my toolbox. It didn't register at first. But when I looked over, I realized he was right. The heavy red toolbox he always kept by the door, untouched. Something about that stuck in my head. That night, after Danny fell asleep, I walked around the apartment again. The break-in hadn't been random. Whoever did this wasn't after a TV or a microwave. They were after specific things, the money, the documents, and the letters. It felt personal. That's when it hit me. Only a few people knew about the storage unit. And even fewer knew where I'd hidden the money. I opened my contacts list and stared at one name. Tyler. I didn't want to believe it. He'd helped me open the safe. He'd driven me to the hospital. He'd even covered a shift at work when I needed to take Danny to school. But he also knew exactly what was in that safe. And where it came from. The next morning, I walked to the pizza shop where we both worked. Tyler was prepping dough in the back, humming like everything was normal. I didn't waste time. Did you tell anyone about the safe? He blinked. What? The storage unit. The money. You didn't tell anyone, right? He paused, just for a second, but it was long enough. I stepped closer. Tyler. He put his hands up. Okay, listen. I didn't mean for anything to happen. I just mentioned it to someone. I didn't think they'd actually go do something stupid. Who? He hesitated again, then said, my cousin. Davy. He's been in and out of trouble. I told him about the cash, but not where we lived. I swear. I didn't know he'd come here. My blood boiled. You told someone we had money stashed in a safe. Do you even hear yourself? He looked panicked. I'll fix it. I'll talk to him. No, I said. You've done enough. I walked out, fist clenched, heart pounding. That night, I went through Mom's old phone again, desperate for a distraction, and found a photo I hadn't noticed before. It was taken years ago, me, Danny, Mom, and Dad. We were all standing in front of a small, one-story house. The date said 2008. The house didn't look familiar. I asked Dad about it the next day. That was your grandmother's house, he said. Out in Ridgeville. She left it to me in the will, but I never did anything with it. Figured it got sold off. Do you know if it's still there? He frowned. No idea. Something inside me lit up. I grabbed the photo, packed up what little we had left, and told Danny we were going for a drive. It was a long shot, but I needed anything to hold on to. We drove 3 hours to Ridgeville. The roads got narrower, trees thicker. When we finally pulled onto a gravel path, my heart skipped a beat. The house was still there. Run down. Overgrown. But standing. We parked and walked up to the door. The lock was rusted, but the key Mom used to wear on her necklace, the one I'd kept with me, fit perfectly. The door creaked open. Inside was a time capsule. Dust everywhere. Old furniture covered in sheets. Faded wallpaper peeling from the corners. But it was safe. It was ours. Danny wandered through the hallway, stopping to look at a picture of Mom when she was younger. Is this where she grew up? Part of it, I said. We spent that night on the floor, wrapped in blankets we found in the closet. No power, no heat, but we had a roof over our heads. For the first time in weeks, I didn't wake up feeling hunted. The next day, I called Dad and told him about the house. He was stunned. Said if the property was still in his name, maybe we could fix it up. Make it a real home. That's when I had an idea. I took the last bit of cash we had left and bought a prepaid phone. I snapped photos of the house, cleaned it up room by room, and listed it on a home repair community board. Not to sell, but to ask for help. The post read, teen raising little brother after losing mom. Found an abandoned family home. Trying to make it livable. Any tools, skills, or spare hands would be a blessing. I didn't expect anything, but by that evening, the post had blown up. The next morning, I woke up to over 50 replies on the message board. People I'd never met were offering paint, tools, even labor. One guy said he had an old generator sitting in his garage that we could have. A retired electrician offered to rewire the whole house, said he'd bring his granddaughter to help paint since she was pretty good with a brush. At first, I thought it was some kind of joke. But then cars started pulling into the gravel driveway. A woman brought warm breakfast sandwiches and hot coffee. A man from 3 towns over showed up with a pressure washer and said, "Heard you needed a hand." Within days, what had once been a forgotten shell of a house started to feel like a home again. Someone donated insulation. Another brought new locks for the doors. A local church youth group offered to help clean out the basement. It was overwhelming, but in the best way. Danny ran around like a little project manager, showing volunteers where things needed fixing. He even put up a little paper sign that read, "Welcome to our home. Please wipe your feet." For the first time in forever, I saw him laugh without holding back. Dad came up every weekend, toolbox in hand. He didn't say much, but he worked hard, replacing windows, fixing stairs, patching holes in the roof. And I saw something in his face I hadn't seen in years, pride. He even built Danny a treehouse in the backyard, just like the one he used to talk about when we were little. But the biggest surprise came one sunny afternoon when a black SUV pulled into the driveway. Out stepped a woman in a crisp blazer holding a clipboard. I recognized her instantly. The social worker from months ago. She looked around, clearly surprised by what she saw. Then she looked at me and said, "Jake, I came by to do a welfare check, but I think I walked into a miracle." I laughed, maybe for the first real time since all this began. She walked through the house, inspected everything, talked to Danny, and then asked me to step outside for a minute. "You've done more than anyone ever expected," she said. "This place is safe, stable, and full of love. I'll be filing paperwork to make your guardianship permanent." I didn't even try to hide the tears that welled up. I just nodded and said, "Thank you." That night, we celebrated. The neighbors brought food. The volunteers came back for one more round of pizza and music. Someone even brought a cake that read, "Welcome home." Danny stayed up past his bedtime, showing off his superhero drawing to anyone who'd look. He told them all it was called The Watcher, based on a real hero. When someone asked who it was modeled after, he pointed at me. That nearly broke me in the best way. Later that week, I found a small envelope tucked under the front door. No name, just a simple note that said, "For everything you've done." Inside was $500 in cash. I didn't know who left it. Maybe one of the volunteers. Maybe a stranger. But it was enough to cover the last thing on my list, a washing machine. No more dragging clothes to a laundromat 2 towns over. Life wasn't perfect. Not by a long shot. I still worked long hours. Dad was rebuilding his life one piece at a time. And Danny still had tough questions about mom, about loss, about why things happened the way they did. But we were together. We had a roof. And we had hope. One evening, just as the sun dipped behind the trees, I stood on the porch and watched Danny chase fireflies in the yard. Dad came out and stood beside me, handing me a root beer like he used to when I was a kid. "You did good, Jake," he said quietly. I looked out at the glowing house, the swing set we'd built, the light in my brother's eyes. "We did good," I said back. And I meant it. About 3 months after we'd settled into the old house, things finally started to feel normal. Not easy, but normal. Danny was doing well in school. I picked up a second job at a nearby gas station, working evening shifts to keep the lights on. The town had started to feel like home again. Not because of the buildings or the streets, but because people actually saw us. Not as charity cases, but as a family trying to make it. Then one day, out of nowhere, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. It was short. Just a few lines written in neat handwriting. "There's more to your mom's story than you know. Check the Ridgeville County Recorder's office. Start with the deed history on the house. A friend." At first, I thought it was a prank. But curiosity got the better of me. So the next day, after dropping Danny at school, I drove into town and went to the records office. The woman behind the desk helped me look up the property using the old parcel number from Mom's keychain. She clicked around her computer, then paused. "That's strange," she said. "What is? This property wasn't passed to your dad from his mother. It was purchased 15 years ago by your mother." I leaned closer. "What?" She turned the screen toward me. "Lisa Whitmore. She bought this house in cash 2 months before your father entered rehab. Paid under a trust name. Quiet transaction. Didn't file for homestead tax exemption, which is probably why no one looked twice." That didn't make sense. We were broke back then. I remembered those days well. Cheap groceries, cold winters, Mom clipping coupons at the table. How could she have afforded a house? I asked the clerk if she had any records about the trust. She handed me a printed copy. The trust had been funded by a single large deposit from a private bank account, under the name of someone I'd never heard of, Marissa Jennings. That name wouldn't have meant anything, except for one strange detail. It was signed in my mom's handwriting. When I got back to the house, I pulled out the shoebox of old letters and documents I'd managed to rescue after the break-in. Buried near the bottom, wrapped in a faded cloth napkin, was a birth certificate I'd never seen before. It was for me, but the mother's name didn't read Lisa Whitmore. It read Marissa L. Jennings. I sat down hard on the floor. My ears were ringing. Was my mom not really my mom? Or had she changed her name to escape something? That night, I confronted Dad. Told him everything, the deed, the trust, the names. He sat down on the porch steps and ran a hand over his face. "She never told you," he said quietly. "I guess I shouldn't be surprised." "Told me what?" He looked off into the distance, eyes glossy with memory. "Your mom didn't grow up around here. She ran from her family when she was 19. Said they were controlling, cold, obsessed with reputation. Her father was loaded, owned half the land in a town up north. But he cut her off when she refused to marry some rich guy they'd picked out for her. She ran, changed her name, started over. That's when I met her." I sat down beside him, trying to make sense of it all. "She never talked about them," Dad continued. "But when you were born, she wanted to make sure if anything ever happened to us, you'd be okay. So she opened that trust using her birth name, paid for this house with it. I think she always planned to bring us here when we were ready." I stared at the old floorboards beneath my feet, wondering how many secrets this house had held. "She was trying to protect us," I said. "Always was." The next day, I called the number listed for the Jennings estate. I didn't expect anyone to answer, but someone did. An older woman. Sharp voice, but calm. "Yes, this is the Jennings residence." I hesitated. "My name is Jake. I believe Lisa Whitmore, Marissa Jennings, was my mother." There was silence on the line for several seconds. Then she said, "Hold, please." Another voice came on, a man this time, probably in his 50s. "Jake, is it? I'm your uncle. Your mother's brother." We talked for almost half an hour. He said they tried to find her for years but had respected her wish to be left alone when she cut ties. After I told him she passed, his voice broke a little. "I always hoped she'd come back one day. She was the best of all of us." I wasn't ready to meet them yet. Not officially. But I told them I'd reach out when I was. And I did, eventually. A few months later, I took Danny with me and visited them. A large house on a hill, with framed oil paintings and polished floors. It felt like another world. But they were kind, soft-spoken, generous. They didn't try to erase the life we had. They just wanted to be part of whatever came next. Back home, life kept moving. Danny entered the art contest after all. The judges loved his drawing. He didn't win first place, but he got second, and the town library framed his work and hung it near the entrance. They even added a little plaque below it that read, "The Watcher, in honor of the real heroes among us." And that was enough. Sometimes, I sit on the porch swing Dad fixed, watching Danny draw in the yard. I still work 2 jobs. I still have moments when the weight of it all sneaks up on me. But I'm not that scared kid anymore. I'm his brother, his guardian, and the keeper of a story that started in poverty and pain and ended in something close to peace. 2 years later, things look completely different. The house we found abandoned is now bright with color. The siding's been painted a warm gray, there's a welcome mat out front, and Danny's treehouse has solar-powered fairy lights strung across it like something from a movie. I'm 20 now. Still working, still budgeting down to the last cent, still waking up before sunrise, but we're stable, steady, safe. Danny's 11 now, and he's grown taller, more confident. He still draws everyday comics, heroes, short stories. His favorite character is still the Watcher, but now he says it's based on two people, our mom and me. I never saw myself as a hero. I still don't. But I guess sometimes, being a hero isn't about saving the day with capes or magic powers. Sometimes it's about showing up, taking care of someone, choosing to fight for a better tomorrow, even when today feels impossible. We still talk about mom all the time. We keep her photo in the hallway, and Danny likes to say goodnight to it before bed. And Dad? He's still in town. Clean, steady job, rebuilding one day at a time. We see him often, mostly on weekends. He cooks breakfast like he's trying to make up for 100 missed mornings, and Danny loves every minute of it. He and I are still working through things, but he never misses a chance to say, I'm proud of you. I think he's trying to say it to both of us, to me and to himself. The biggest change came this spring. A letter arrived from the Jennings estate, my mom's side of the family. Inside was an invitation to a private ceremony. A scholarship was being created in Mom's name, funded by money she'd never used, hidden for decades. The Marissa Jennings Art and Resilience Grant. It was designed to support kids like Danny, kids who've gone through too much and still keep creating. They asked if Danny would like to submit a portfolio as the inaugural applicant. He did, and he got it. The moment I opened that acceptance letter, I felt something inside me shift. Like a weight I didn't even know I was carrying had been lifted. We stood together in front of a crowd of strangers, holding the certificate. Danny spoke into the mic with a quiet, proud voice and said, "This is for my mom, who was the strongest person I ever knew. And for my brother Jake, who made sure I never gave up." I didn't cry in front of the crowd. But when we got home, I stepped out onto the porch, looked up at the sky, and whispered, "We did it, Mom." Because somehow, through all of it, the loss, the pain, the poverty, the nights we went without, something beautiful grew. We didn't just survive. We built something. We turned a legacy of struggle into one of hope. And I think she knew we would. So now, every morning before work, I sit with my coffee on the porch, watching the light rise through the trees. Danny's usually already up, sketching in the corner with a blanket wrapped around him like a cape. We don't have a perfect life, but we have a real one. And that, I've learned, is more than enough.